medical bankruptcy is one of the leading cause of homelessness in the United States. It shouldn't be that way. I think that GLP-1s are the best opportunity we have in our lifetimes of a movement and a wedge that can maybe change affordability and access for everyone. And maybe I'm delusional, but I think it's the most important time to be active around the access of these medications.
Would you like to learn more about the topics that were discussed today? Join us at radicallyhealthy.com, where we're combining lifestyle with other tools to add to our toolbox. We have many offerings, from a free community to a private community and even one-on-one support. Hope to see you there. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. I am so excited for you guys. Today, I have Sabina. She is the founder of GLPWinner.com. We are going to go into an amazing tool for your journey that you need to know about to get accessible, affordable care, reliable, all those things that check the box. We're going to go into the different diets, what works, what doesn't, maybe the mental aspects behind this, and maybe a little bit of news on our access. Thank you so much for coming on, Sabina.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited. I love your content, and I love talking about all of this stuff, so I can't wait.
Me too. Huge fan of you, because it's hard not to be enthralled in the access issues that are going on. And also, when you first come into this, the number one thing people say is, I don't even know where to start. So I don't know if we want to go quite yet into your tool, but it's going to come. First, I would love to know a little bit more about you. Like, have you struggled with weight your whole life, or did it come on during a time in your life, or what has it been like for you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was not big when I was younger, like in high school, and I grew up in a really rough household, and I felt like food was like the one thing I could control, and also maybe the one thing I got comfort from. In late middle school, early high school, I was eating maybe 500 calories a day. I was super skinny. When I look back at photos of me from that time, it's stupid to say, I think I could like karate chop my arm. That's what I always think. Like my arms were super tiny. And then in high school, I stopped doing that. I tried to have a healthier relationship with food. I started stress eating. I maybe put on 5 or 10 pounds, but I wouldn't really consider myself very much overweight. When I was in my early 20s, that's when the weight started coming. And I think I always had a strange relationship with food, even when I was a kid. I think thinking back on it, my grandmother could tell that I had a weird relationship with food, because she would say things to me. She was very kind. She didn't say it in a mean way, but she was like, "Hey, you and food, there's something going on there. If you don't watch and get that relationship under control, you're going to be quite big." Like my grandmother would tell me that. Like she'd be like, "Look, you got to watch this, because I see what you're like around food, and it seems unhealthy to her." And of course, food is one of the great joys of life. I've had a wonderful life with food. I've eaten at amazing restaurants. I've done that whole thing, and I still love food. It's just always a complicated relationship.
Can I bring up something really quick? I don't know if you watch, but Candace Cameron, remember we're about the same age. She was on Full House, and you could almost tell, even as a child, that she is one of, I'm going to call it us. And throughout life, she has come out and said that she ended up struggling with a healthy relationship with food. I try not to use certain words that YouTube doesn't like. She said it was unhealthy, the routes that she ended up keeping that weight down, being in the public eye the way she is. And now she's come out and said her whole life, she's struggled with food noise. So I think it's so interesting. We can kind of see it in kids, but we have to be careful, because some kids, they don't necessarily have obesity or food noise, but more they're just going through their different stages. But so you have this whole evolution, you've got some trauma, you've got a lot of stress. Do you think that is what affected your body's ability to communicate with the brain? Or were you ever on high doses of, I'm not 100% sure what's causing this, but I have some theories, antibiotics, maybe mold exposure in homes, but trauma and stress could be
Yeah,
some.
I think some of it is trauma and stress is correlated to obesity. I think it's complex, though. It's never one thing. And with my relationship with food, all of my vacations and holidays were all around eating, right? I want to go to the country. I want to travel over here because the food is good. That was always the number one thing. I think, yes, childhood trauma. I think when I got out of that house, I had a moment of I was just fighting for survival until I was out. And then when I was like truly separated, it was like I fell into a depression just processing everything that happened to me as a kid. I also found out literally in the last year I have ADHD. ADHD is also correlated to obesity. Most entrepreneurs have ADHD, like 80% of them. Many of the most successful people that you know have ADHD, but it is correlated to obesity because it's, more impulsive behavior. There's that too. And then obesity and diabetes run in my family. So while I don't have diabetes, I think there's probably different flavors of insulin resistance that I was dealing with. And
Mm.
pretty convinced I have PCOS, but no doctor has ever actually diagnosed that despite me bringing it up several times because I have a lot of high testosterone symptoms like facial hair. My period was never regular. It was always late. There was always something weird going on there, and it just felt like that was something that never ever got diagnosed. I don't know if that was something I always had or developed after a certain point or it got worse over time. Bodies are really really complex things the more that I learn about them, and the number of factors that come into obesity, it's high. I'll also mention one I don't think I've mentioned before that's coming to mind, which is I had a time in my early 20s where I had uh, food insecurity. And that situation completely transformed my relationship with food. So, middle school, high school, I was not eating enough to a point that it was unhealthy. I started eating more, and then I reached a point where food was a scarce object and created all this anxiety around having enough food. And, I was also raised by parents that had food insecurity when they were growing up. So, I feel like even as a child, that kind of gets passed down to you of like, be grateful for the food that you have. Like, we can afford to give you meat. Not everyone can afford that. You should be finishing your plate. All of those things are multifaceted. They layer on, they make you an interesting person and shape who you are, but they also shape the relationship with your food and how your body deals with that. And, it's definitely not just one cause. It definitely wasn't childhood trauma that led to me emotionally eating. Yes, that happened, but some people do that and they still remain metabolically healthy. And for a number of factors, that wasn't the case for me.
That is so relatable. And I would love to know the statistics of the people struggling with their relationship with food and having food scarcity. My parents were, my dad and my mom both grew up in impoverished homes. They were growing a lot of their own food. They were saving every single thing. We had to clear everything off of our plate, even if we didn't like it. That's what we would have for breakfast the next day. And that's so interesting that you bring that up. This is super complex. I do think after trying a GLP-1 that there's a physiological piece too, but there's definitely this piece you're speaking of. So you've gone through all of this. How do you end up to a place where you end up on the keto diet?
Yeah, so I dieted in my 20s and lost a good amount of weight. I think of 40 pounds just doing like normal calorie counting. Like the I'm just trying to eat healthier thing. But then I gained all the way back, and then in my late 20s, early 30s, I did keto. I was on keto almost continuously for 3 years and for the better part of 5 years even though I took breaks. And I think what worked for me about keto was the hard rolls. It was like, yeah, I absolutely can't have bread. And if I stick to this, I did feel like I was more satisfied than just calorie counting and trying to eat healthy because cutting out the carbs meant that I was getting more protein when I was actually eating. So, in that sense, it was successful for me. Now, after I hit my ideal weight, I stayed at my ideal weight for 5 years. I was like, I fixed it. I solved obesity. It's not a chronic illness for me. I was totally delusional, obviously, but yeah, that's
This
the
is
time.
super relatable with my audience and many people in my audience. So keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, oh, I've been at my ideal weight for 5 years. I'm good. I want it life. I'm the exception to the rules. I have control. It really was. I was still drowning in food noise. Drowning in food. As like white, I like to say I was white knuckling life every day to not eat. I was counting calories of everything I was in, like visually, even if I wasn't literally calorie counting, calorie tracking, which I was tracking for many, many years. And I could just eyeball, I was like, okay, that chicken breast is kind of big, kind of small. This is going to be this many calories. Like, I was obsessed. I was still so obsessed with food. What eventually made me stop, I was exercising a lot. I was exercising literally 6 days a week. I was in the best shape of my life. I thought I had everything figured out. I just reached a point with keto where it was two things. I just felt so low energy after a certain point, so honestly kind of starved, that I
Mhm.
felt like I wasn't as sharp as it could have been. I wasn't on top of things. I performance wise, because I was trying to increase my weightlifting and athletic performance, I felt like I plateaued at a certain point when I was at a really low BMI. Probably like for me, really low is like middle of normal, middle of the normal range of BMI for my height. And so I quit because of that. And then also, I just realized I wasn't making friends. People would ask me out to eat. I would have the menus of every restaurant around me memorized, obviously. I'm obsessed with food. Mostly memorized, or I had a good idea, and I'd be like, well, I know I can go there. I can get a hamburger with a side salad and just not eat the bun. That was my go-to keto meal at a restaurant that didn't have a ton of selection. And for restaurants where I couldn't, or if there was drinking involved, there was just too much temptation, because you have one drink, then you're much more likely to make worse decisions. And drinking was also less fun on keto too, because I would get instantly drunk and then I would just sober up like 30 minutes later if I took a shot of like brown liquor, or not a shot, or like drank brown liquor as my cocktail because I couldn't have any carbs. I would be like instantly drunk, sober in 30 minutes, couldn't actually get a pleasant buzz or what you call it, but then it would also increase my chances of cheating or having a cocktail or trying to basically seek the experience I used to have when I drank and had a good time.
Yeah. So it really, I mean, we tell ourselves that because it's the solution that we are fine with it. But when you look back after you're done, you kind of go, actually, we haven't gone to Mexican restaurants in 5 years because I refuse to go there because I can't eat anything there. I refuse to go to Chinese restaurants. Everything always has to be a burger joint because of mom. Mom is always picking weird stuff. Mom has to pre bring stuff for the airport. Like you think that you're fine. You get a routine, but reality is you're pre looking at menus. You're hunting for different things. Everywhere you go, it's always a problem because there's just not that much there, or you're pre planning and it's obsessive and it's all the time. And I don't have a lot of local friends. All of my friends are online because they're all doing what I do. And then it's like, well, I get to be around people like that, a couple times a year. And yeah, that's reflective of what you're saying. There's something, this is kind of a big topic in the keto carnivore community right now. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but what I'm seeing is even if we increase our calories on these low carb diets, it seems to have the same effect as if you're in a low calorie deficit. If you're in a big deficit for a long period of time, your body acclimates to that low. Like if you eat 800 calories for the rest of your life, you will not be skinny. You won't. Your body will adapt. I'm seeing the same thing when we go low and zero carb, that our body adapts. Just like that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. It's interesting because after I was on it for a longer period of time, like 3 years, I could do things like one time. I have this memory that's like etched in my mind of one night. I live in Austin. It was during South by Southwest. I went and got a slice of pizza and I was like, this is gonna kick me out of keto. And then I went and measured my ketones. It didn't, because I was so solidly in keto and I ate really well around that. But it was just like, that was the ultimate treat, a slice of pizza. It is, I honestly think sometimes while the restrictive keto rules worked for me, functionally what happened was I just gave myself another type of eating disorder where I was still so obsessed with food. I was still limiting everything that I could have. And I agree with you. I spoke to a doctor on another podcast that I did where it was like she thought because I had the eating disorder when I was a kid where I wasn't eating enough calories. that might have permanently damaged my metabolism. And to me, it's like I felt like maybe if you do all the calculator stuff, I'm 5'5.5". I could lose weight at 1,500 calories, but I can tell you, I don't think I could lose weight at 1,500 calories counting every calorie. I think I need to go more like 1,200 calories to do anything. Body is fighting it constantly. So I've seen some creators and some communities do things where they try to fix their metabolism by eating more and obviously gaining weight. To me, I felt like because keto was the only thing that had truly worked to get me down to my goal weight, and it was these hard rules that literally any each cheat meal felt like, oh, so you're going to throw it all away. Like that's what was going through my mind. Oh, you're going to throw all of this weight loss away by having this one cheat meal, because it felt like those were the stakes. The stakes where you cannot cheat at all.
And the fact that when we are in these diets, the fact that you can recall that one piece of pizza, like then you would blame that you're not perfect and that's why this isn't working perfectly, because you're not perfect because you ate one piece of pizza last year. I had the same thing where people would tell me, well, carnivore is not working for you because you're not perfect enough. And I would think, well, I did add sugar-free whipped cream to my coffee 4 days ago. Like
Yeah.
now that I'm not like that, I couldn't tell you what I ate 3 days ago unless I put it in a tracker, and I'm not tracking anymore. And just like you, I had to track like every single day, and I was physically tracking, not just like mentally, but like physically tracking. And so to be free of that and here's another thing you just brought up. That's what people will say who've never struggled before, is that that's the level we have to be. That's what you deserve because you did this to yourself. I've been struggling since I was a kid. I didn't do this to myself, first of all. And secondly, shouldn't we be able to live too? Like, why is it expected that someone who's struggling, and now we're learning there are actual physiological reasons we're struggling, why should we be in like lockdown for the rest of our lives?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know, I don't know if you want to bring this up, but another thing had happened was at the end of keto, and people will say keto and carnivore so sustainable. Well, we agree you can sustain it for years, but the problem is what happens when you can't give your full mental capacity to that because something else has happened, because it's real life. And I don't know if you want to share, but something had happened in your life.
Yeah, so I maintained the weight loss for over 5 years. I thought I was doing great. And the pandemic happened. I gained 5 or 10 pounds. I didn't think anything of that. I was, of course, in my mind, I'm like, hey, you're about to fall off a cliff. You're about to fall off a cliff because you gained like 10 pounds after the pandemic happened. But then it was my dad got sick. My dad is at the time he was around 80. He has dementia and he had memory problems, but he had a health situation where it was suddenly like he needs to have brain surgery, he needs all this medical care. Overnight, he can't live on his own anymore, and he was. And meanwhile, I don't have a low stress life as a baseline. I was running a business in video games. It was very demanding. There was a lot of pressure on me. And so I ended up taking my dad. I live in Texas. He lived in like a tiny, tiny 500-person town where there are not great doctors nearby. And I ended up moving to Houston because Houston is one of the best medical hubs, certainly in Texas and also in the United States. And I could get him the brain surgery he needed faster. I could get him access to better health care. And I live in Austin, so that's like a 3.5 hour drive. But during all of that, I was driving around Texas, driving back and forth, like trying to maintain my romantic relationship, semi long distance. And it was just a really stressful 6 months that he was based in Houston, where I had to keep up with work. It was super demanding. I was so worried about him and his mental health, dealing with his memory issues and all of these changes and trying to organize and figure out all of the paperwork of power of attorney and everything. It is not easy. It is not easy for anyone. And I was very lucky in the sense that my dad had put away enough money that he could pay for his own care. But if that wasn't the case, I don't know how people do it. So suddenly, to get to my point, suddenly taking care of my body and eating perfectly was not the number one priority. I was suddenly responsible for another human being. It's not exactly the same thing, but in some ways it's like, okay, I have a child or a person that I am responsible for. now who also suddenly has a full life, has finances that need to be managed, owns a house that needs to be managed, and also has a complex medical situation that is an emergency that needs to be taken care of now. I don't know how anyone who was being restrictive could manage that. And even when you talk to people who have been mostly a healthy weight their entire lives, they'll be like, I was a college athlete, everything was going well. And then I got injured, and suddenly the thing I was doing to stay fit was no longer accessible to me. It happens to all of us. I sometimes describe myself, if I visualize myself, it's like I'm a spinning top. So imagine a top that's spinning, and it's like perfectly in balance. And if you keep going fast enough, you'll be fine. And maybe this is the ADHD. But if I stop doing all the 10 things that I need to do and stay on top of, and I stop, I will fall over. And it felt like I fell over.
That's so interesting. I work with people one on one, and people have come and said, listen, keto, carnivore, it works, except that I have to be absolutely perfect every single day. I can't go to the movies. It's too temptation. I can't go out at all, because if I don't get to bed on time, then I wake up late, and then I miss my whole morning routine, and then my whole day is shot, and then I don't have energy. And then I feel like, well, it just like snowballs, the having to be perfect every single day. And meanwhile, what I think me and you have learned is maybe there was something off that could have been addressed, instead of trying to white knuckle it and override every single day. And so I had made some notes. So you had lost 40 pounds at one point, then you gained 60 pounds, then you lost the 60 pounds on keto.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened?
So I gained the weight back when I took over my dad's care. That was like 2021. And then I had this situation where I was engaged. I was trying to plan a wedding and get married. Had all these things going on. I was never more motivated to lose weight. I was like, I'm going to lose weight. I know how to lose weight. I couldn't do keto anymore because I'd gotten a diagnosis of idiopathic intracranial hypertension.
This is interesting because I actually have some group members that they have, I don't know if this is the same. There's like lots of, this is a general comment. I know people who have constant, what is it called? Motion sickness. Is that the
I have
same, similar?
or my motion sickness is so sensitive that anything that might trigger motion sickness, like riding in a car, riding on a plane, I will have that motion sickness for a week. And so I obviously, if you're ever in a car with me, I'm not going to make eye contact with you. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to manage it. And then I also get really bad headaches. So I got the diagnosis of idiopathic intracranial hypertension. I got a lumbar puncture to diagnose it. My pressure was 25, which over 20 is high. And so what it is there's too much cerebral spinal fluid in your brain. It's putting pressure on your brain. It's giving you these symptoms. Motion sickness, vertigo, really bad headaches is one. It sometimes is called pseudotumor cerebrae because it looks like you could have a brain tumor, but when you get an MRI, you don't have a brain tumor. You just have too much cerebral spinal fluid giving you strange symptoms. So I got on a medication for that called acetazolamide. It's also the medication they give people when they're going to high altitude. I guess that's what it's known for. And what it does is it helps dehydrate your cerebral spinal fluid. And when you're on that, you're not supposed to be on keto. And I will say I'm not on it now. That medication worked better than anything. I remember I went to Disneyland with my partner and I rode all the rides and I was like, yeah, I could never have done this before. Like I felt invincible. I would still get motion sickness if I was doing something that caused motion sickness, or if I was riding in a car, I could still get motion sickness. But when I left the car, the motion sickness would go away. So it actually, to me, that wasn't really that bad. What happened was I got a kidney stone. And what I know now is that medication has an 11x increased chance in giving you a kidney stone. And it's possible there was also something off about my chemistry that made me predisposed to kidney stones. I don't know. I just had a very large kidney stone and I had to have surgery to get it removed. It got lodged. Horrible, among the worst pain in my life. Not the kidney stone, but the stent getting removed was the worst pain of my life. So I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be on this medication anymore. I don't want that to happen again. And I went and I got put on topiramate, which is also sometimes prescribed for this. And topiramate is also prescribed for obesity, or it's combined in, if you've heard of Qsema, that's topiramate and I think phentermine. So, yeah.
The overwhelming thought is that, are you sure you don't want to go and become like a doctor? Because you sure spit off drug names and stuff, and you retain information so well, and you've already experienced the system so many times because you're struggling to get a PCOS, you're struggling to,
Yeah.
you told me before we hit record that it took you like 10 doctors to get this diagnosed, right?
It took a lot of doctors to get a lot of things diagnosed. And honestly, that's part of why I started my company, was because I got good at navigating the healthcare system for my dad, for myself, married to someone with chronic illness. And I was like, how can I help this scale? I don't know why I retain the names. Maybe it's because I took Latin in high school, so I retain the legal words and the medical words. I don't know. But I'm a college dropout. I think it's a little late for me to go become a doctor at almost 40. Probably when this is published, I'll be 40. So I don't know why, but yeah. So taking topiramate, do not recommend topiramate. I do not recommend Qsema. I feel very strongly about this. If you take away one thing from this, watching this, do not take topiramate or Qsema unless you've talked to a doctor about it and you've tried many other things, maybe a GLP-1. Don't take it, because topiramate has the side effects of brain fog, making you forget words, and it also made me suicidal. So I took it for 10 days. It was harder for me to write. It was harder, like we talk about me retaining these big words. I couldn't do that if I was on topiramate. 100% wouldn't be able to do that. I'd been learning Spanish and I'd gotten kind of good. And I have a baseline Spanish I've had since I'm a kid because I'm half Mexican. I grew up in Texas. I just know some Spanish. But I was like, I was actually studying. I was spending an hour, 2 hours every single day practicing my Spanish. Went away 10 days on topiramate. Forgot all the Spanish I'd learned in the last year. It's like it dry erased the board clean of the Spanish that I learned. Obviously, that made me depressed. Even something like having a complex conversation, watching a really complex movie or TV show where you really kind of have to pay attention to know what's going on, I couldn't handle that. I was a zombie on topiramate. And so I got off of it. I continued to be suicidal and have brain fog for probably up to 3 months after. And the Spanish never came back. So I think, I don't recommend topiramate to anyone. When I did research on it, some studies showed I think it's like up to 25% of people will have symptoms like that, where it's like suicide, severe brain fog, not remembering words or being able to write as well. So that was a traumatic experience. You can take medication and have a traumatic experience from that medication. And it feels like maybe I had two of those because acetazolamide gave me the kidney stone and topiramate made me suicidal and made me forget words. And it was around that time that I was also more aggressively trying to lose weight a few months after that. Because when you have idiopathic intracranial hypertension, it tends to be in women of fertile age ranges who are overweight. That's kind of the stereotype of who has it for doctors. And they'll tell you, well, lose weight. The thing that will really fix it is losing weight. And I'm at a healthy weight now, and I still have the symptoms. So,
I hate when they blame the weight. Everything. Everything. Well, if you just lose weight. Oh, if you just lose weight. We just went to a doctor for one of my kids who's gained 40 pounds in a year. That's a red flag that there's metabolism issues. Plus, it runs in our family. So, this is like red flag, red flag. Plus, I'm Mrs. Carnivore. So, like, we've already been low carb in this kid. We've been moving the kid, but 40 pounds. And his response was eat less, move more, and come back. So, you've had experiences with medications that were not good at all. So, would you say that you proceed with caution and you research things? Like, how did you end up on GLP-1? Because most of my audience is like, let's get off all the drugs that we can. Totally get that. That's me too. But then there's a point where I was doing all the natural things and it wasn't working and I needed help. And this is a very kind of natural drug in the way that it mixes with your body knows what it is and knows what to do with it. And there can be deficiencies. And how did you end up on the GLP-1?
yeah. So I was trying to lose weight again. I tried for 5 months and counted every calorie, and I lost 10 pounds pretty easily in the first month, and then I just stalled. I wasn't losing despite counting calories. And I was like, okay, something is different with my metabolism. This was never easy before. Losing weight, losing weight on keto, losing those 60 pounds is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I was like, why is this not happening? Is it maybe the beginnings of perimenopause because I was, 35, 36? It was in the range where it's like things could start changing. And I had done research on GLP-1s. I find that sometimes people who are more science minded are more resistant to getting on a GLP-1 until they do the research. I read about the medication. I was like, okay, this doesn't seem like a scam. This doesn't seem like fin. It seems like it genuinely could be great for you. It was still early enough that we didn't have all the research that we have now showing so many of the additional health benefits. So I knew mentally I'm willing to try this. I still tried to lose weight for 5 months first. And I think it was maybe because I had I had traumatic experiences on medications. I was also not working in that time, so I felt super poor. Even though financially it was okay, I'd planned to not work for a period of time, but I felt poor. And then I think it was also me telling myself I could still probably do it on my own. I didn't need it, but I told myself I'm going to try, and if it isn't working, I'm open to trying these medications. So then it was, how do I get the medication? you know, how do I get the,
Yes.
where does this actually come from? And so I got the first GLP-1, which was, I started on Wegovy it was an OBGYN that I went to that had a big office. And in the office, they had a weight clinic. And so I started going there, talking to a nurse practitioner. And I immediately, within the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was like, I might be on this medication forever, you know? And I honestly don't even, in hindsight, I don't even like semaglutide. I could not tolerate it very well. I went from zero point 0.5 to zero point 0.7, and on zero point 0.5, I definitely have a ton of side effects. Maybe it's because of the idiopathic intracranial hypertension, but I am like a canary for nausea. If somebody could give you nausea, I will get nausea, whatever it is. Weird smells that, like, I could smell something bad and gag and never throw up. Now it's like, or at least particularly on semaglutide, I could smell something and it smelled gross. I'm gonna throw up. So on zero point 0.5, I was maybe throwing up once a month from either side effects or bad smells or just other environmental factor. I went up to zero point 0.7. I was throwing up like 3 times a week. I was like, this doesn't seem good. I don't like, throwing up 3 times a week does not sustainable. So I went back down to zero point 0.5. And initially I'd lost probably on 25, 30 pounds relatively quickly. And then I stalled out because I couldn't go up on the medication anymore. I stayed on the lower dose for probably 6 months in a stall before switching to tirzepatide. And when I switched to tirzepatide, I was like, this is such a better fit for me. I very quickly lost the weight. I still have lots of side effects, but I was able to tolerate them. And I was able to go up on dose and lose weight at a pretty regular pace. I wasn't stalled anymore.
I would love to know, when we have people sometimes go from semaglutide to tirzepatide, they will say that their food noise isn't, or they don't like the feel. What feel do you feel different? I've never tried semaglutide.
So, how I describe it for the food noise, like, yes, the food noise is better on both of them. That's true. On semaglutide, I had more food aversion, meaning
Mm.
if you put a birthday cake in front of me, I'd be like, get this away from me. I do not want to be next to it. I am literally disgusted by this cake. Like, the idea of it. Like, I feel nauseous. I want to throw up because I'm around the cake. It was aversion. On tirzepatide, I still kind of have some of that. Like, sometimes I don't want sweets or greasy food or all those things. But it's a lot less aversion, and it's a lot more, I don't want to eat very much. So there's food aversion and there's like craving healthier things. I definitely craved healthier things on both of them. But on tirzepatide, it feels a little more healthy and effortless. Like, I could go to a party where everyone was eating dessert and like maybe I'll have a bite or two and I'll be satisfied. Rather than, I could go to the party, but I would be white knuckling the party because I'm so disgusted by dessert. which is weird. That's more what it was like on semaglutide.
So some people like that aggressive food aversion.
I'm
And
sure
then on tirzepatide, it's a little bit more silent, but it's definitely still there.
it's still there to some extent, and it's very much my appetite is lower. It feels more like my appetite is lower. I want to eat healthier rather than this is disgusting. I want to throw up because I saw a birthday cake.
I would love to know, like something that I experienced was pre GLP, pre tirzepatide. It didn't seem to matter what I ate. Like if it was 2,600 calories or 1,200 calories, I was freaking gaining weight. And I add the tirzepatide, and now I could easily eat 2,500 calories, and I'm not losing weight. It's like my body is doing what it's supposed to with the food, and it wasn't before. Do you have anything like that?
Exactly. It very much feels like because I wasn't that much bigger when I was young. I was generally at a healthy weight like through the end of high school. And so it feels like to me, my metabolism is a lot more like it was then, where I could eat a huge meal and maybe I'd be a little bloated, but I wouldn't really fundamentally be gaining weight. My weight was pretty stable. That's how I feel on tirzepatide for sure.
Has it taught you anything about how you've struggled your whole life? Like, have there been any other health benefits? Do you feel like this was missing your whole life? Because that's how I feel.
Yes, I feel like it was missing my whole life. And even though when I was on semaglutide, like I'll say the side effects on these medications are no joke, particularly on semaglutide for me. It was no joke. There are definite downsides to being on these medications if you have side effects. But I still want to be on it for life, really, genuinely, because the food noise was silenced. In the first 2 or 3 months that I was on it, I'm married to someone who's always been a healthy weight. And we started having these deep conversations about, is this what it's like for you? Where you could forget to eat lunch, or like, yes, you're hungry, you should eat lunch, but it's like I'll get to it when I get to it. It's not a priority. To me, that was wild because there was this dynamic in our relationship where he was like, oh yeah, I forgot to eat lunch. Oh, I could have dinner, but I don't really care what it is. And I'm like, how can you not care? How are you not, like, to me, if I didn't have a plan for dinner 4 hours before dinner, that was priority number one of obsessing over, like, well, what am I going to eat? What am I next going to eat? If I went on a vacation where, especially if it's like a group vacation where we don't know what the meals are going to be, I would just be obsessed with, like, let's figure out what we're doing for dinner. Let's do this. Like, hey, let's plan because I have anxiety around knowing where my next meal is coming from. And on these medications, I'll tell you, I don't know what I'm going to eat for lunch. I don't know what's in the fridge. Like, when I'm hungry, when it's time, I'll go look and I'll figure something out. It'll be fine. That was not how I was. That was not my life before these medications.
I think we're married to the same person. When I met my husband, he took me to this Italian restaurant because it was supposed to be romantic. I'm like, he's not Italian because I've been low carb for like 15 years. I've been low carb a very long time. And then I had gastric bypass, so I have to eat low carb because they changed my, we're not going to go into that. And he would order a bowl of noodles and then covered in butter and then just like drink 6 pops and then forget to eat for like 24 hours. And I was like, if I took one bite of anything that you're consuming right now, I will have food noise every 5 minutes for the next maybe 3 days. Like, yeah, no, plus I would gain weight and feel sick. And yeah. And so that's what I feel too, is that this makes me feel normal for the first time in my life. I didn't
Yes,
even know what normal felt like. I didn't even know that this is what and people wonder, why are we struggling? You now I'm like, now I know why you're succeeding.
yes,
Because this is
you
how you get to live.
yes. And when you see like the skinny person who's like, "We'll just eat less," like the asshole who judges someone who's in a bigger body. To me, it's like, oh, well, if my life was like this, I would feel the same way. I'd be like, well, why don't you just stop eating? Like, I just wouldn't have the life experience of, I mean, I probably wouldn't be that way because I'm not an asshole, but I wouldn't have the life experience of, hey, my experience is profoundly different than the experience of other people. And clearly they have an issue not like stopping eating. And for me, I can eat a big meal. I can eat 1,000 calorie meal and I will just eat less for the next 12 hours. And it's kind of not a huge deal. I can also overeat and feel bad on GLP-1s, But what's more often going to happen if I order really indulgent food is that I'll start eating and I'll just like slow down and then I'll realize I've been sitting there holding my hamburger, talking to people because I'm far more interested in the conversation than the food. And then my food will get cold and I'll just be like, oh, in my head, I'm like, no, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to finish this. And I don't. And that was never behavior I had before. That was behavior I'd observed in other people sometimes where they were like, yeah, I'll finish it. And then they didn't. They're like, yeah, it just wasn't that important. And I was like, okay. So now I'm operating on that wavelength of, this is my life now of I forget to eat. I say I'm going to finish a hamburger and I don't. I'll hold my food like I'm about to take a bite, but I don't actually eat it for like 10 minutes. It's actually kind of bizarre.
Yes, I totally agree. And do you ever go on cruises?
No.
Me and you, we're gonna have to join the downsized one day, like for sure. I love cruising. So pre GLP-1, I was like, ooh, it's time to eat. And it's like the best time ever to be on a cruise because there's food all day, every day, and you can always find something you like. And so it's like, yeah. But then there was this really sad thing, which was we would be at the pool and I would get anxious and upset and crabby if we missed lunch. I would I would every single day walk by the pizza place to get the toppings over and over and over again and then scold myself, but then indulge, but then scold myself, but then no, 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 like it was just 24/7. And now on a cruise it's like, "Oh, we'll just get the next meal." You know,
Yeah.
it's just so much better. And then the other thing is, have you had any gut issues or any gut healing? Because pre GLP-1, if I ate anything dairy or anything outside of my home, my gut would like become pregnant. And after GLP-1, I can go on a cruise and my gut doesn't do that anymore.
Interesting. I don't know that I have, but if I eat poorly, I don't get as nearly as bloated. I think one of the other things I discovered because I discovered I think I'm allergic to raw shellfish. But what happened to discover that was that I would eat sushi and like 50% of the time I would throw up and get really sick. And at first I was like, maybe I had bad sushi. Maybe I had bad sushi. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. I also found out that I'm allergic to oats and rye. And I cut them out. And I never thought I was allergic. I drink oat milk. I had oatmeal all the time. Oat milk is my favorite milk, actually. But now if I have it, I feel like shit. My stomach hurts, I get bloated, I feel awful, and I just don't have that anymore. And rye, I found out, is in most IPAs. They'll just like throw some rye in. And so I used to love IPAs. I used to love, stereotypical craft beers that were full of flavor. I reached a point where it's like, this just kind of makes me feel bloated. I was allergic to rye. So that was my experience. Wasn't necessarily correlated to the GLP-1, but the
Hmm.
gut journey has been interesting and different.
So the fish thing, I found out that there can be a gene thing where you don't detox fish very well. So if the fish has a certain bacteria in it, it can make you sick. So I have the same problem, 50-50. If I in a funny thing, if I eat fish from Walmart, I'm fine. If we get fresh fish, I am more likely to have this and it's like having the flu. It's bad. I don't know if you have this thing, but yeah, there are some fish things.
Raw shellfish, at least since I've said I'm allergic to raw shellfish, I haven't had a reaction. Granted, I'm not racing to eat sushi all the time anymore because I've thrown up so many times, but it will be coming out of both ends. It's bad. It's
Yeah.
bad. No one,
Yeah.
I wish that on no one. And I've also had some allergy symptoms like my cheeks are tingling, like it feels genuinely like a food allergy.
Okay, so what is your highest weight? What did you start on around you? Just to give people some hope. Everybody's different and we shouldn't compare each other. But I also find that sometimes when we hear stories, it gives us hope, it gives us inspiration. So, what was your journey like on GLP-1?
Yeah, so my highest weight, which I didn't actually weigh myself at my highest, I'm adding like 5 pounds from when I weighed myself, is around 220. Um,
And
and
you're
now
5'5" and a half, you told us.
5 foot 5.5, that's salt like middle of the obese BMI. Um, Now I'm at 155 and well, like 153 to 155. I've been floating around that way for more than a year now. And I feel no risk of completely falling off the wagon, no risk if I have a bad meal that everything's gonna be lost. Technically, 155 for me is a little bit in the overweight category, but I'm trying to gain muscle. I say that I haven't been to the gym in the last month. I'm trying to gain muscle, and and I find that if I'm too low of a weight, it's much more difficult to gain muscle. I also think I go back and forth. Should I actually lose another 10 pounds or not? Yeah, to me, I honestly, I feel like I'll never feel comfortable in a bikini, even though if I flex and pose, I have visible abs. It looks pretty great, but I don't have that relationship with my body, and I'm totally okay never feeling comfortable in a bikini. And maybe I'm just getting older that I'm just like I don't have anything to prove to anyone. For me, it's really about optimizing my
Oh.
health. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, also when I get too skinny, I don't like the way I look.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when I get too skinny, I just look too skinny and I look too weak, and I want a little bit more on my body. So I do go back and forth on should I lose another 10 pounds because then I would be in a normal BMI. My LDL was a little high. It's still a little high, so the GLP-1 didn't fully fix that, which means like and I asked a doctor, should I go on a statin? It's like on the line of high. So
Have you had your thyroid and hormones checked? Oh, you tried.
I've have several times and they've told me it's normal, but
I wonder if you need a different person because sometimes the high cholesterol is actually your thyroid and your sex hormones not converting very well, is what I've
ooh,
heard. Because,
that's good.
I'm in the family of people who have a lot of high cholesterol because we're eating all the meat and the fat. And so we wonder, like, why are you having high cholesterol, but you're not? And sometimes it's the thyroid and the hormones.
I
Yeah.
will.
Anyway, so you are all about health. I love this. I feel like the same as you. It's not necessarily that I need to lose 10 pounds because I don't even weigh myself anymore. I don't know about you. I went from weighing myself every single day to it's fine. My clothes fit. Like, and when I do spot check like a couple times a month, maybe it hasn't done anything. So I don't know. I'm with you. I want more muscle. I don't necessarily need to lose the 10 pounds.
Yeah, yeah. I would say my in the same way the food noise is way turned down, I think my relationship with my body has never been better. Truly, before I exercised because I was like, we have to get everything under control. If I have a single cheat meal, I'm going to completely fall off a cliff. And now I genuinely exercise because I want to be healthy, because I want to move my body, because I want to exercise. It's not I have to exercise or else.
Same. It's a totally different bucket. And in the same way, too, I'm on the verge of almost it's possible that I could become, well, with a lot of excess skin, because my highest was 330. With the excess skin, I could be potentially one of those fit bikini people, but I almost won't let myself go there because I think I just need to heal acceptance with where I am and heal how I see myself. So I haven't fully pushed to being the 100% ripped beach person because I'm trying to catch up with reality. I don't know if you
Yeah.
feel the same.
Yeah. Let me say I am not ripped. And when I say visible abs, it's like under a layer of fat and loose skin. You could see them. It's kind of me boosting my ego. And that's okay.
Mhm.
I don't have any person to impress. When I'd lost the weight before, this is kind of a weird story. I was naked in front of someone for the first time, we'll say, and they were like, "How many kids do you have?" And I was like, "I don't have any kids. I don't have any kids, but thanks for letting me know that thanks for commenting on my body that way." Right? So,
So so we're healing our relationship with ourselves. We're working on being healthy. That's the other stigma that's out there is that everybody just becomes a Skeletor. And another thing that was interesting is being on all these diets I've been on, people were like, why can't you just accept being 170 pounds? Well, at just barely 5'4", that's considered actually obese. And I was 40% fat. So why should I accept that? So you take that down a little bit. And then it's like, I'm not looking to be 105 pounds, but I didn't feel healthy when I was fully obese. I do feel healthy today. So
yeah,
lots of healing. Okay. So did you ever have insurance coverage for this?
no,
Yeah,
absolutely
me either.
not. I'm an employer, so we buy our own insurance. We don't get offered insurance that covers GLP-1s for weight loss. Like we couldn't do it. And from talking to people, because I just went to a big healthcare conference where there's a lot of insurance people, they're getting really creative at denying it. So, and they're also dropping coverage. People thought, this is a few years in. At this point, maybe insurance coverage would get better. It hasn't. Everybody is getting letters like this week, next week, the next month that they're losing coverage. And the other thing they do, because I do content accessibility. The other thing they do is they say, hey, we'll cover this. You just have to go to this telehealth company. And it is a telehealth company like Virta is the name of one of them. There's several of them. But if your insurance requires that you go to a specific telehealth company, or like my insurance, United Healthcare, doesn't cover it, but they're like, can we send you a scale, a smart scale? No. If they require it, those companies, they advertise to employers like me who buy insurance. They say, we're going to reduce your GLP-1 spend by 50%. How do they do that? They make you diet and exercise for 6 months before they ever give you a GLP-1. They tell you that it's your fault. You don't really need the medication and you can do it on your own. And what is this? We're just recycling toxic diet culture. Why? So that people can save money and not give you the medication that actually fixes the underlying causes. The other thing they do is after you're on the medication, they'll be like, just for 6 months so you can lose the weight, and then you're on your own. Or they'll aggressively try to get you off the medication. And the reason why these companies do this and they advertise, they're like, you can say you have GLP-1 coverage, which we know would be a great benefit, that we would prefer to work for someone who has GLP-1 coverage if we were choosing between two jobs. But it's never that simple. They're trying to deny you coverage to keep prices down because these medications are just still too expensive. And insurance, and in the defense of insurance, which we all know they're not great actors for our healthcare, it is too expensive. When you look at the amount of money that is spent on prescription drugs and the amount of money that we would spend putting everyone on these medications, it is actually genuinely unsustainable at the price point that they're at. So something needs to give. And I'm trying to be an optimistic person. I might just be delusional. I'll be the first to say that. But I think that when you look at US healthcare, everyone agrees it's not working. It's too expensive. We shouldn't be so stressed about having insurance or going bankrupt. Medical bankruptcy is one of the leading cause of homelessness in the United States. It shouldn't be that way. I think that GLP-1s are the best opportunity we have in our lifetimes of a movement and a wedge that can maybe change affordability and access for everyone. And maybe I'm delusional. You can totally think I'm delusional. I totally understand if you're jaded. But I think it's the most important time to be like active around the access of these medications, because it's the best opportunity we have to change the system for all of us and make it better and more sustainable.
When you say change the system, do you mean like the patents and the way that things are being controlled? Or do you mean like more like what I'm enjoying is that all these telehealth companies that are popping up allowing me cash pay to get what I need? Or do you mean all of it?
I mean, all of it. So I think I'll address some of those points. So I think drug patents are, it's funny when people talk about how they don't like compounding or other options for getting these medications, they talk about safety, but when you actually have conversations with them, they're actually talking about drug patents. And I think we need to continue to have innovation in medicine in the United States. I'm not saying we can't have any drug patents at all, but the way it's working does not work for us. The fact that pharma companies can have an exclusive patent for such a long period of time, and what they do is they create what's called patent thickets. So you've heard of the injector being part of the patent for Zepbound, right? They patented the actual injector. And what they will do, because they've done this with inhalers, they'll change something on the injector and they'll say, well, I'm not going to make the old version. And then they'll repatent the drug. They'll also get medications approved for other indications. And we know with GLP-1s, there are so many health benefits. There's almost infinite indications you could get it approved for, plus modifications to things like the injectors. So I think I'm scared that these medications could be in a place where they have such a dense patent thicket that they never go generic. And in a lot of other countries, they just don't let people do that. They'll be like, no, 5, 7 years, that's it, you're done. And when you look at most pharma companies like Eli Lilly, they make 70% of their revenue off the United States only. Only us. And we are not dumb. You can look at the fact that these are $1,000 here and like $200 is high in Europe. It's usually under $200. And we're not stupid. We know we're getting milked like a pig, right?
On top of, in our state, a lot of people like us are paying $1,600 a month in health insurance premiums, and we have a $6,000 deductible, and we have a $12,000 out of pocket. So we have to pay like $40,000 to get any health care. And then you want us to pay on top of that $1,600 a month or $1,400 a month for this medication. It's just so broken. Man, you brought up something else when you were talking about the patent. I mean, I know I have gastric bypass, and post gastric bypass, it's very common to have reactive hypoglycemia. There is no doubt this is the best treatment that we have available for that. And we don't get coverage, and it's life threatening, and we don't get any coverage for this. So people are like, okay, well, I really want it, but the number one thing that tells them not even to go down that route is they're like, I can't afford it. I'll never be able to afford it. And so you created a website so that we could go there and shop, right?
Yeah. So I made GLP Winner, which is basically we do price comparison. We show you reviews. We show you summaries of reviews. We show you also recent reviews. And then we also show you sourcing. So if you're getting it from a compounded source, we'll show you what compounding pharmacies the provider uses. And then we'll show you the reviews for the compounding pharmacies, because that's equally important. If you're getting compounded, is what pharmacy is it coming from? Do I trust that pharmacy? And then also the provider experience itself. And we're trying to make it comparable, because if you are on the same social media that I am, are discovering that you might be getting bombarded by GLP-1 ads. And they will do ads that use really misleading wording like $200 a month, and then you go through their form, and you'll have to give them your email, your phone number, your medical history, your list of medications before they ever show you a price. And they'll be like, yeah, it's $200 if you buy 12 months up front. That's not okay. I don't like that. That's not the experience that any of us want shopping. And for me, when I had been on tirzepatide, this is a couple years ago, so the prices are quite high. I was paying $550 a month. My provider changed compounding pharmacies, they said, and they increased the price to $850 a month. And I was like, I'm getting fucked. That is literally the most you could charge me at that time period before I would go to brand name. And so I called up the compounding pharmacy that I previously used, because I was told it was a compounding pharmacy thing. And it was Empower, which is a huge compounding pharmacy. I was like, hey, can you tell me other doctors in Austin who are prescribing this? And they were like, that's not how it works. We can't actually tell you. And I was like, why not? Like, why can't I find people who are prescribing this and be able to actually compare the options? So I had a few months where it like hung over my head, like, this is something I need to do. This is a chore. I hate that I have to do this. Because if you just wanted to shop around, if you think you want this medication and you want to go through one of the telehealth options, they do tend to be cheaper. You would have to spend 10 minutes on every single one, filling out a form before you ever see the price that you're going to pay. And they would get your phone number, email history, medical history, medications. That's not a trivial amount of time to input all of that. That's 10, 15 minutes minimum, often for most people. And then they're going to retarget and remarket to you. And you may see the price and it was completely misleading. You don't want to do it. Maybe it was a great price with a 1-month coupon and it goes up to like $400 a month, but you didn't know that.
Yeah, what's really interesting, I started out with, I don't know if I should say the company, Lavender Sky, because when you first start with them, it's like a great price. But very quickly, you find yourself giving them $1,200 in a pop. Like, very quickly, you're giving them all this. And another problem I had, if people have been around for a little bit, we're not exactly experiencing this today, but with all of the scares, there were companies that were using that fear to make loads of money. It was kind of predatory for a little bit there. So how did you gather all this info? Do you just research it, or do you have contacts? Do they give you this information willingly?
So we're getting to a place finally where they're giving us this information willingly. But honestly, it was a lot of research, like us going through the funnel, seeing what it was going to be to actually see the prices so that we could reveal the prices, interviewing patients, getting information from patients about, hey, this price changed. We still struggle with that for a lot of providers. There's one provider that I'm not going to name where I knew our prices weren't accurate. And I messaged someone who worked at that company, and it was like, hey, we're friends, can you tell me the price? And she was like, I literally can't tell you the price because it changes so much that like literally only the CEO can tell you what it is. And I was like, why is it so hard that somebody working at these companies does not know the price of their services? That to me is crazy, but that's what we're dealing with. So we also automate it for some people that do have prices that are transparent, but they're kind of buried on their website. And it's honestly a ton of work to keep all of that up to date. A ton of work to keep all of that up to date.
So I would love to, because I don't know about anybody else out there, but with my perimenopause brain, when people tell me there's this great new tool, the first thing I think is I just don't need any more and I hate navigating. So I'm wondering if it'd be cool if I just brought your website up and we walked through it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's say I live in Minnesota. It's cool. So we can pick our state and pick tirzepatide. Am I currently taking? Should I hit no?
If you hit no, it'll just show you the lowest doses. So it's up to you.
Oh,
But
okay. So we'll go with yes, so we can see all the options.
yeah, so sometimes when you are on a medication, the price will go up depending on the dose. So if you
Yeah.
tell us the dose, we'll show you cheaper options depending on what dose you tell us. If you tell us you're starting out, we'll just show you the lowest. So
Okay. So I'm gonna pick tirzepatide, and I'm gonna say I'm a 10. And I don't really. I'm currently on a maintenance dosage. I wonder why that matters. Is it because it gives options for longer term plans, or?
yeah, so it's longer term plans, also bulk plans maybe that are longer, but it's also some providers don't support maintenance actually.
Really?
You don't figure it out until you go through. But if you're at a healthy BMI and you're not currently at a larger BMI, some providers still don't support maintenance, or at least a lot of them didn't. Um, and so here you can say if you want text only, if you want to buy multiple months up front, you can hit bulk medication. Otherwise, we'll show you monthly prices. And then if you want other things like nutrition support, one of the things we're trying to do, and I'm not going to say we've done it yet, is to standardize all of the features and benefits and kind of like membership included or not membership included things that people offer. I talked to one provider who was like, we offer nutrition support. It's great. I was like, great. Tell me more about that. They would email patients a AI slop PDF that was just like 3 pages of nutrition advice. And I'm like, that's not really nutrition support. I can go Google nutrition support. And then other providers, you can have unlimited visits with a registered dietitian. And to me, those are two completely different levels of support. So, one of the things we're trying to do is figure all of that out and make it transparent to you as you're comparing providers. And
Interesting.
some people want the extra support. Some people, when I talk to people, if they've been on the medication for a year plus, did it freeze up or are you?
I'm still here. Sorry.
No, no, no. You can keep going. But like when they've been on the medication for a year plus, they kind of have it figured out. They don't need extra support. And it's sort of just a bill for them, or they care about the compounding pharmacy that they trust.
Does this get me emails from your company?
We have a newsletter. We'll also email you sometimes if prices drop a lot. Or I would also say if you're on a telehealth option and you just haven't done any price checking in the last 3 months, 6 months, you should check it out, honestly, because you might be dramatically overpaying. Generally speaking, prices have gone down in the last few months. So
I always check your website because I want to make sure that I'm giving people what I think is the best option. And hopefully your website is going to help bring the competition that brings the prices down. I know at the end of last year, we saw tons of people bringing their prices down. I don't know if it's changed much since then.
they've continued to come down, and then we'll see people modify their prices. It's been a real mixed bag. So here you can see, some providers are text only, and you're probably going to get a lower touch experience. Other providers have more stuff included, like unlimited provider visits. One-on-one coaching, I would say coaching is kind of a broad term, but it generally means you're meeting with someone that you can talk to about your care or talk to you about your side effects, which some people want. It's somewhat different than, a dietitian that you might meet with, because the coach might not have a certification. They might just be somebody who is a trained customer support person who understands the medication, talks to people all day. You'll definitely get value out of it, but they are licensed in any way. So,
Okay, so you've got a warning here, charges for canceling.
yeah, if you click into the link, so we try to put this here. So with the merge, I'm not sure if this has changed, but they used to be you would cancel and they would charge you for medication that even though you had a monthly billing.
Oh, and here's the pharmacies.
Yeah, we have the compounding pharmacies. You can click on any of the pharmacies and you can see information on them. We also do a summary review. So if you don't have time to read 50 reviews, we'll also tell you the reviews in the last 30 days. Because to be honest, most of these providers, like none of them are perfect. They've all gone through rough patches where they've scaled too fast, or they had a compounding pharmacy change that caused delays. That's very, very common. So we look at the reviews. We summarize, yes, the overall reviews and the reviews in the last 30 days. So you can be like, okay, this provider maybe isn't great to go with right now. That's totally a thing.
This is so interesting. So we can actually look at the pharmacies. What are the pharmacy reviews? What did they add in? That is so interesting. This is really good. I remember, submitting that first order with Lavender Sky. I was scared. I was like, I don't know if this is real. I didn't know any of the pharmacies. I didn't know if they were legit. I didn't know if they were going to sell me, I don't know, water and send it to me. I didn't know if Lavender Sky was legit. And you just almost kind of had to like Google and Reddit and then hope and pray. So this is so much better. Not
Yeah.
really hoping and praying. This is much more strategic. And when did you start this website?
So we've been around for a little over a year, but I will say the first version of this was very, very minimal. It was very basic, and we've been building out and expanding on top of that. I think, um, one thing we're working on, but we haven't fully done, is automating a lot of the compounding pharmacy license lookups. So verifying that they're actually licensed in all the states that they're saying they're licensed in. And we do a lot of that manually right now. We're working on automating it. It will be possible to automate in some states and not all states, because we're trying to stay on top of everything. It's exhausting, and I don't think for somebody to get this medication, they need to suddenly become an expert in compounding pharmacies. We
Mm,
don't do that. So we're trying to do a lot of the legwork for you, and
this is
we also.
so depending on where you are, I'm a starter. Where am I going to find my best? I'm in maintenance. Who's going to support me? That is so interesting that you're giving the actual. You want to buy 12 months? Okay, but it's going to be 2760.
Yeah.
That,
So
this is super
there's
interesting.
multi-month pricing, which honestly, if you're getting started, I would not buy more than three
Don't do
months.
this.
Don't
No.
buy more than 3 months up front. And if you're, because you don't know if the medication is going to work for you, you might start on semaglutide, and like me, you can't tolerate it past a certain dose. You have to switch to tirzepatide. And like there's nothing wrong with starting on one medication, switching to the other, but when you buy several months up front, you're kind of locked in. So unless money is no object for you, in which case, congratulations. But most people, like the starter packs are typically 3 months supply, where they assume that you're going up each month, and you can always check in with your provider if that's not going to work for you. And then there's bulk, where you're buying several months up front. That tends to be a lot better for people on maintenance, in the sense of like maybe you should buy 6 months of medication if you're on maintenance, right? Maybe that's the most effective thing for you to do, but it's going to be, $500,000 up front.
500,000. So my next question would be, is there a spot on here where it says how much they ship out? Because didn't they just change the standard so that it can't be good for any longer than 3 months?
No. Okay, so this is an interesting question. So I'm not 100% an expert on compounding pharmacies, but I've learned so much about them. So the BUD, or the beyond use date, basically the expiration on your medication for compounded, that depends on the pharmacy and the state they're in. Some states have restrictions where it has to be used in like 60 or 90 days. And that's just a hard restriction for all compounding pharmacies in those states. Other states or other compounding pharmacies can have longer beyond use dates if they meet certain requirements. Sometimes that means that they've actually paid to test the product that far out and make sure that it's still maintaining quality. Sometimes it's more related to the state laws of where the compounding pharmacy is in. So I know that wasn't directly answering your question, but it's to say that actually that's very complicated.
Because they changed the USP standard to 3 months, right? So,
I'm not sure.
okay, that's what I heard. I don't know who I heard that from. Any news right now? Anything happening in the world in our access that we don't know about? Because you're really in on it. Like you're attending hearings and everything.
There's always so much news. Honestly, I don't even have time to cover everything that's going on. So I'll just say in the last 48 hours or so, like 2 or 3 days, we've seen Walmart's adding Zepbound vials as an option. It's still through Lilly Direct, but you can go physically pick them up at Walmart, which will be better for some people. It's not restricted to what insurance you're using or if your insurance covers it or not, but you're always doing the cash pay option, which for most doses is $500 a month. The other thing I'll say is there's a lot of litigation. There was a lawsuit against Mochi. It recently, in the last few days, got dismissed. I went to the hearing for that. The judge was going to dismiss it. And the outcome of that case, it's not if Mochi did anything wrong. It's if Eli Lilly, our pharma company, has standing to sue a telehealth company because they're doing compounded. And compounding alone does not mean that Eli Lilly or a pharma company is harmed, was the conclusion the judge came to, and this was a federal judge. So the telehealth companies need to show more concrete harms to the pharma companies need to show more concrete harms to the pharma companies. And of course, that's more complicated. Now, does this mean there isn't going to be continued litigation? No, of course. Of course, pharma is going to change their strategy. They're going to refile cases. They're going to try to keep litigating. The battle is not over, but it is looking positive for compounding, I would say. I've never seen the businesses in this space feel more confident that compounding is going to stick around. And then on the policy side of things, I'm trying to rush because I know you need to go. On the policy side of things, it's a really exciting time in the sense that legislation was just introduced for compounding pharmacies, in the sense that they want better safety standards. There's a battle going on right now. If I don't know if I can say this word, you might need to censor it. Retatrutide, the word that starts with R, that is a drug that's in the pipeline that looks really promising. Okay, that medication, Eli Lilly is trying to get it categorized as a biologic, which means that it has more than 40 amino acids. What functionally happened when I talked to pharmacists and experts is it was actually 38 amino acids, and they added on decorative amino acids. So it could get over 40. So it could get categorized as a biologic. Why do we care if it's a biologic or not? One, biologics have a 12-year drug patent by default. They're also a little harder to get FDA approved. But they have a 12-year drug patent as a starting out point. Normal drug patents are 7 years. The other thing with biologics is they can't be compounded by compounding pharmacies. And so that may be another conversation that might come back up. So when you look at medications like insulin, if you look at the history of insulin, insulin is a biologic. And insulin is maybe also difficult to manufacture. I'm not an expert. But people in the United States regularly die because they can't access insulin because it is unaffordable. And there are two companies, I'm not going to say their names, but they're the two companies who are in the GLP-1 space that basically have a duopoly, where it's two companies have a monopoly on insulin. And what they do is they release a new version of insulin that's going to be very expensive, going to be a new drug patent that's going to be so high. And then they create a patent thicket and litigation, which means that it's very difficult for other companies to touch that. And they say, well, we're just not going to make the old version of insulin anymore. Everyone's going to have to get the expensive new version. If you know the history of insulin, that was a patent that was developed at, I think, the University of Toronto. The the person who made it gave it away for free because it should be accessible. It is a life, if you have diabetes, you might need insulin to live. It is a life-saving drug for a lot of people. And the thicket of drug patents has made that inaccessible. And the fact that it's categorized as a biologic means that compounding pharmacies cannot produce it. And you could imagine theoretically, granted, I don't know how to produce insulin. I might be saying something dumb right now. If compounding pharmacies could make insulin, it would completely change the landscape in the United States for people who have diabetes, who can't afford their medication, for what it seems like we may be coming to a future where healthcare premiums and insurance premiums are getting higher and higher and higher. And we're seeing this trend of maybe more cash pay options, people taking healthcare into their own hands, which is not ideal. Having more access to things like compounding pharmacies, while they're not perfect, really dramatically increases access to medication. And we're in a future where people are more and more going to be directly responsible for their healthcare. If you've never been sick, you're very lucky because in US healthcare, you have to do so much to advocate for yourself. And if you don't fight for yourself or your loved ones in the US healthcare system, they're going to have worse health outcomes, generally speaking, unless you just get super lucky and you get amazing doctors and they're all perfect and they all advocate for you. It's not even that doctors are bad. Yes, there's definitely some bad doctors. It's that the healthcare system is putting so much stress on them that they only have 10 minutes with each patient. That 50% of a doctor's office is actually just focused on billing the
Mm-hmm.
insurance, trying to get paid. All of those systems put stress on the doctor where they aren't at their best when they see you. They might have 10 minutes with you. They don't have time to write a prior authorization. And
Yeah.
so it's like this broken system where drug patents are going too far, insurance isn't paying for everything, doctors are pushed to their breaking point every single day.
The standard
And
of care sucks.
yes, the burden is on the patient to figure out how to better navigate this because if they just kind of go with what US healthcare does to them, they're not going to get their best level of care. And I think it's an important, exciting time for policy change. I'm optimistic, could be totally delusional. I'll be the first to say that.
I feel like you're my sister from another mister, and I hope one day to get to meet you. I'd like to stop going maybe to so many meetups where we're eating all the meat and start coming to some of these conferences and these things and get to meet you guys because the people in this community, a lot of them are pretty freaking awesome. Many people have been through so much, and to finally get to find this place of peace, this place of healing, this place of hope, and you are helping give it to them by allowing them to find affordable but also reputable care, reputable medication for themselves. So thank you so much for all you're doing. Where can people find you?
Yes, I am on all the socials as Lollipop, LAWLIEPOP. On Instagram, it has an S on the end, Lollipops. But I do content on Access. I do content also, I do reviews comparing telehealth options. And if you're in the buying process or you've never compared, I do some content on like, here's the things I would look for. I do some content on how to ask your doctor for these medications and strategies around that and advocating for yourself in the healthcare space. And then I also sometimes travel to court cases. I go do DC Hill visits and talk to legislatures. And I try to get the word out that, hey, this movement behind GLP-1s, it's so much bigger than just me and you and all of us. It is actually the future of healthcare. And we need to awaken to this and advocate for ourselves because no one else is going to do it. So maybe I'm delusional, but
I think
that's
you're lovely and you're right on. And I thank you so much for everything you're doing. Thank you for coming on today. If everybody likes this content, please like, subscribe, and share, and go follow Sabina if you don't already do so. So thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
thank you.